All right. Well,
That that
all my crazy nuts are up here. Hi, I'm Carrie Burt. I made Corpus Chaosum, and Robert is the host, Robert Pepper. And it started when he was talking about a film he wanted to make incorporating the tarot, and we were at this French restaurant in New York City, and I was coming up with ideas for his film, and then while we were talking, I had a film in my head, and he had a film in his head. And at a certain point, I said, is it okay if I make the film in my head and you make the film in your heads? And he thought, well, we'll show them together and discuss them, and so that was sort of the impetus. So he made his film, The Great Work in 33 Steps, and he had a Zoom chat about it. And so that was the answer to rather than in-person screening of both our films and a discussion. We put them, I think his is on Amazon Prime and mine is as well. And they're very different, but that's good. I've been making films since I was like 14 years old, and when I started shooting this in February of 2018, I had a lot of ideas in my head, but I didn't like any of them. I didn't like any one idea. It was a sort of, I've had writer's block before, but I'd always defined it as not that a lack of ideas, but I didn't like the ideas that I had. So I decided that I would change my methodology. And instead of making short films in a small burst of energy, I would say, I'm going to give myself 2 years to make this. And I'm going to be able to sort of work for the man and then work on this film and sort of stretch out my otherwise intense short-term creative energy and sort of like expand it and approach all these ideas that were hitting me as because I was in recovery. I was like 7 years sober, but I didn't do the spiritual side of the steps. And so I considered myself an atheist, but it's sort of circumstances came to a point where there was a spiritual need that had to be fed or nurtured or faced, um, because I ended up thinking that I wanted to rearrange the outside world to fix the inside world. And a lot of this nonsense or sense was in my head. And I thought if I put it on the screen, I might be able to make sense of all this disparate
I did
stuff.
it for you.
And so because all these things were interested me, a lot of these, like the Chaos Magic book by Peter J. Carroll, and the work of Daniel C. Matt, Kabbalah, and I liked the nothingness, concept of nothingness, in Kabbalah with Ayin, and there were all these disparate things that were calling me from, usually from books I'd read, and I thought, I'll organize them together, and I'd written these songs, and I'll put the songs into it. It was another. I'd made a feature before, but it was more of a narrative, and I mean, I think I just saw the film again today, Corpus Chaosum, and it's very personal, and it's very much like, I think it's it's equivalent to kind of like Jung making his Red Book, meaning discovering that he was an artist, even though he considered himself a scientist. But all these things were he was obsessed with, and they had to come out. And he was a tremendous artist, and it's sort of a calling, and you either answer it, and then it's a bit of a gift too. But the fact that I wanted to ask if anybody made it through the whole film, who's watched the film, because and I want to thank the people who were in it. Rob and Dan were the first people, on the first shoot, and I want to thank Jennifer Gordon. I was going to shoot at her apartment first, but I said something that hurt her feelings, so I said, "All right, that's not going to go." Um, and I pretty much shot it in my living room, with the permission of my wife, and I wanted to. I don't. So, is anybody watch the film, and do they have any impressions? Because I know what it means to me, but I'm wondering if it's at all meaningful to anybody else.
Yeah, yeah, I saw the whole film through a couple of nights ago. I do have a question about how you wrote the script, where it was the opposing voices, uh, and during certain portions of the film, I actually tried to shut down one voice and hear only a single voice. And although it seemed like overall it was a piece of poetry, in many, many cases, each individual voice seemed to be an individual poem itself. And then you had the, for lack of a better term, the competing voice, but they both melded. How did you what was the impetus for writing the script that way? Did you have anything in particular in mind? Was that an objective of yours in order to do that?
Yeah, I think I've always been fascinated with, when I started to study Nietzsche in college, I was taken by his first book, The Birth of Tragedy, talks about the Apollonian and the Dionysian. I've always thought, and he sort of took that from Hegel, whereas the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, which I later learned is also a sort of a cult practice of sort of like the union of opposites. I've always been fascinated by that because I'm very much of a all or nothing thinker. I'm like, I either want the world to be this pure place, undisrupted, or it's this crazy place. And sort of the idea of the Corpus Chaosum being like, I'd seen the cut of the brain and the Corpus Chaosum, and I thought, someone must have started a conspiracy theory because it sort of looks like Christ crucified. And I Googled it. Has anybody else thought of this idea that the Corpus Chaosum could be Christ crucified? And apparently nobody has. So I thought that would be an interesting idea, and very much of a general idea that not Christ is sort of a historical Christ, or um, just as the idea of unconditional love being like a healing thing that can bring the union of opposites together, which is pretty much a quelling of the fears and the terrors of anyone facing the void. And I mean the so I've always been interested in this idea of the left and right hemisphere, which even if it's not localized, there's still these modes of being where there was a left and right hemisphere, and and that they talk to each other, or they communicate through the Corpus Chaosum, or Colossum rather. There's the Corpus Colossum, and the Corpus Chaosum for me is the sort of idea of love being able to bring these opposite things together into a sort of synthesis. And that's because the character is sort of like just in their head and tortured, and they're trying to find resolution. And it's like at the end of the film, I could make a dark ending, like my usual films are kind of dark endings, but we were in such a dark time. I thought I need a happy ending for this film. And also it quotes William Burroughs at the end a couple of times. He talks about how his last words that he wrote were about love being the greatest sort of healer of pain. And he knew a lot of pain, and and he dealt with addiction and so forth. So I thought that was interesting but he was vehemently against, organized religion. And he actually did later in his life embrace and become a chaos magician and so forth. So a lot of these things like cross, I tried to take a lot of these varied things that I was interested in and weave them together and understand that maybe there's something beneath all these surfaces that's true, that can connect these things. So we don't have to stay in these sort of ideological ghettos and so forth. And I don't have to stay sort of in my head. I hope that answers your question to some degree.
It does. It does. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any impressions about the film? Welcome, Adam. Apologize. I'm glad you're here. I'm Carrie. Bert made the film. Robert is another artist, musician, filmmaker who made another film, sort of tarot being the jumping off point. But other than that, we left it to ourselves. Did you make it through the film or anything?
I did make it through the film. I really liked it.
Good.
I thought it was pretty interesting. I liked how the tarot was really brought into it a lot.
Good. Yeah, I wasn't sure how that because I was sort of new to the tarot and I sort of had to keep
Right.
to the major arcana. I mean, what I found helpful.
Was that a reference to pseudoscience using the in some sort of a way?
The tarot?
Yeah. We can use pseudoscience. People use pseudoscience in religion as a way to project different things to people using brainwaves and frequencies, mind control. I was kind of picking up on that a little bit in some sort of a way.
Yeah, I've never used them for divination. I've used them only for meditation and sort of
yeah.
I saw the Gordon White Rune Soup podcast that I really enjoy. He's sort of hard to understand, but there was one guy who was talking about, you put a card on your mantle or something and you sort of meditate on it, and it's working with the subconscious basically. Like in this film is sort of my subconscious speaking, however chaotic, and to sort of externalize what was internal, sort of get out of isolation and sort of look at and try to bring form to all these these terrors and confusions that I had. I mean, it's either like a spiritual awakening or a mental breakdown. I don't want to get off topic, but anyone else have any impressions of the film?
I just thought it was really funny that when we were first talking about making tarot films, and you were a little hesitant to make one because I was already making one, and you were like, "Oh my God, I don't want it to be the same." And then I watched your film and knowing what my film was going to be like, and I was like, "Wow, they're radically different characters."
Yeah, I was going to be like, Robert's is going to be better than mine, and
the only difference is that the word tarot was involved.
I know. For me, the tarot is used as sort of like the world. At a certain point, this guy's like, I've got too much self-hatred and hatred for the world, and I have to, it's a sort of, it's a hippie love film disguised as an occult Satan film. But I mean, it's but it's not that was sort of how the process church was, even though they had their Jesus, which was Robert de Grimston. It was still a human being. It wasn't an idea of infinite love. It wasn't. It was. They actually had a guy, which can get dangerous once these spiritual things can be physicalized. They can be abused. The other thing I wanted to realize is that there's the underworld and the spiritual world, and there's both the temptations into destruction and also the redemption of like sort of forgiveness and so forth. So I mean, a lot of times when I was sort of introduced to the New Age through like a girlfriend, I was very much against like astrology and all this stuff. I was like, and she was into Louise Hay books, and I was like sort of against it, but I realized that a lot of people, when they talked about spirituality, it was always sunny, but it's dark there's darkness in the underworld too, and it's a matter of like, this was a film about sort of the underworld and sort of how he came to heal that underworld. Joe's here. He's the star of the film. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being in the film. Thanks, Maura, for being in the film, and Dan.
Yeah.
So I have a question. It's more about the film's process. So like, I mean, I know some of the people that you cast in these things, and they're kind of into like subcultures and stuff, but like when you cast other people that aren't really into subcultures, like when they see the film, like are they like, what the hell was that?
Well, a lot. That's the thing. I like to cast people who, you know, for who they are, and I mean, I don't want it to become self-conscious. I don't want it to be like, oh, this is a dark like film about evil, so I have to be evil. You know, I mean, sometimes like I want just a person naturally there. I don't want it to be characterized that and I because I don't want it to be redundant. I want it to play against the naturalness of just this person I know as this person, and to deliver the line straight, and let the interpretation be left open. But if I guess it's called indicating and acting. Like I don't want to, because I just find it redundant. Like, oh, you're an evil character. Oh, I'll be evil. You know, I'd rather have like an innocent person, you know, being the evil character, because at least there's some tension. You know, if everybody knew exactly who they were portraying, usually with the non-actors, they'll want to sort of go with, you know, to be that character rather than, and then there's no tension. The tension is I'd rather have people play against type, because at least there's a tension there. And also, like, I want uncertainty, because I'm not sure what I was doing, and it's actually made more sense than I thought it would. And I shot sort of pieces and then shot something else. And but yeah, I like to put people in it who are not necessarily in that mindset. I don't know why. I think because, like, what would the point be if my actor was like, oh yeah, I'm really into the Protestant church and they're fascinating, I'm really into like Kabbalah, and like, oh, we can sit. I'd rather just sit around and like talk with them and have a dinner and talk about these things. A lot of these things I was fascinated with, but didn't have a lot of people to talk to them about, you know, because we didn't. And a lot of times I'm interested in these things because I can't really talk about them, and I'm interested in these things as film material or music material because I can't really just have a conversation with someone, or it's really about the conversation with myself or my unconscious. Like, it's sort of my unconscious, and it's like it reveals itself and you look into it. Okay, so I think I'm getting a lot. Yeah, Adam.
I was going to say, what's interesting about the Process Church is that they got in contact with George Clinton back when they were doing that, and he actually collaborated with them and the Parliament Funkadelic.
Yeah.
And that is actually one of the most interesting things about them, is that people don't know that, and that when you're listening to these albums by them, they're directly influenced by the Process Church and the concept of having Jesus and Satan as both like a good and evil kind of yin and yang thing that they worship both at the same time. And I don't know, I think that it's a very complex thing that they did, and it's a very cool thing that they did. And I don't know what happened to Robert the Grimston. I heard he just disappeared and lives on like Long Island, if he's still alive, or Staten Island.
Staten Island, yeah. No, it's interesting is that they have sort of an Eastern kind of philosophy within a Western context, and their primary thing was they thought the world was ending, and so that often gets people rallied to be in a cult if there's a doomsday, and there's always a savior. But they said, you know, Jesus said, love your enemies, and if so you must love Satan, but they also had Jehovah, and they also had Lucifer, and they thought they were sort of a psychotherapy cult. They came from Scientology, and also were studied in, what was the guy who had inferiority complex? I forget his name. But they came out of Scientology, and they were a sort of psychology. It was sort of the I forget what it's called at first, but they saw these gods as sort of symbols of sort of types of people, almost like archetypes. Like you identify as a Luciferian because it represents this, and then,
Exactly.
so and the interesting thing is, like, these were a lot of like highly intelligent, um, um, well-to-do people in London. They were like architects and stuff, and they had this fascinating journey. I mean, they were completely sort of demonized and misrepresented with the book The Family, or their involvement or not involvement with Manson, which doesn't seem like they really were involved. And then also like Maurice Terry, or whatever his name is, the Ultimate Evil. He really, like, that book seems to be full of nonsense and so forth. But I have people who think he's right, but they were, until I think uh, Adam Parfrey made the book about the process, and that was sort of a coming out with Timothy Wiley, who was a core member, and he pretty much demythologized it. And there's a great documentary about the Process Church, and it was pretty much an adventure of like these people following this but the interesting thing is that it was actually a matriarchy, like behind, like the symbol of the cult leader was Robert de Grimston, who fashioned himself to look like Jesus, but it was actually Mary who was really running the show, which is interesting. And but yeah, they're fascinating. I sort of, I'm interested in what's scary, and you go as close as you can to, and then make so I don't know if I'd want to have been in the Process Church. I mean, it sounds terrifying, but it also sounds very exciting. But it probably for younger people, and it's of a time, with the 60s and stuff. And the worst case scenario of that was the Manson family. I think is a more, nothing horribly went wrong, and it actually turned into Best Friends, which was an animal shelter. I think that's what they morphed into and what they are today. If any remnants are there, they're like, yeah.
And here, well, a lot of people don't know this, is that the Process Church also had a lot of German shepherds, and there were white German shepherds they carry around with them. So they have this image of just like this evil cult, and that was their thing.
Yeah.
But I think around the time of the Manson family, there was also a cult here in Boston called the Lyman Family. And Mel Lyman was this cult leader on Fort Hill, and he influenced the Process Church, and he influenced people like Charles Manson. And after that happened, it turns into the first satanic panic, where their sweet hippie cult turned into like raids and police breaking it up because they thought that they were involved in some kind of satanic sacrifice, which is what I find really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, going into the spiritual realm, it's not always beautiful. It's like there's darkness there too. So you've got to be, just as the outside world has its dangers and temptation, if you go into, your subconscious and follow these things, because the New Age is always like, oh, spirituality is just uniformly wonderful. It's like, and surrendering is uniformly wonderful. It's like, for me, it's like, I don't know, I'm just at nature paranoid anyway. And most of these things I'm fascinated from afar. I'll make a film about it. Like I made a film about cults, and everybody like, were you in a cult? It's like, no, I just am terrified of groups. And this is sort of the nightmare of how of the worst way groups can go wrong. But it's this balance between, ourselves as individuals and the rest of the world. I mean, the character in my film is like, he's retreated into his own world, but his own world inside has become as horrific as the outside world. So then what do? And if you can't control the outside world. You've got to clean up what's inside. And it was after 7 years of being dry, of being sober from alcohol, that this film actually was also going to maybe be called Dry Drunk, but I don't think anybody would have got it, or as it is, so be it, which is from the Process Church, but it's also, you know, I had to embrace acceptance and gratitude. So it's a deceptive film. What?
Sober be it.
Sober be it. Anyone else?
Hey, Sergeant Pepper. Oh wait, he stepped away. Okay. I'll forget it. I'll ask him
I
later.
never thought.
It wasn't important.
But then there's the science part of it, which is like I have my friend Aubrey, who sort of plays the Earth Mother of like I was making this film in my living room. My wife's like, "Why don't you go outside? You know, why don't you take your film outside?" I was like, "No, I can't. This is all about the inner darkness of my head." And then I was like, "All right, we go outside." And so the counterpoint of like science of like and nature and so forth. And then I guess what's his name? Dima sort of plays the younger version of this guy, and and maybe it's a bit of a Garden of Eden too, that he regains his lost innocence, and he finds another sort of matriarch in this garden, and they return. I don't know, you know, I got that out of it when I watched it. And the polyrhythms in the film are not very clarified, but they're hard to clarify anyway. But they're a matter of like two time signatures that are completely disparate from each other, except they both meet on the downbeat. Like I think it's mostly 3 against 2. And I tried to, you know, it's hard to get a good mix too, where you can hear both. Everybody has pets except me. To get both of the, but that was the idea of the polyrhythms too. It's like, but I don't know if it was articulated as much. Rob had a question for Robert. Rob, you got to unmute.
Oh, you put me on the spot. Hey, does anything grow in the garden where Carrie's toenails went?
There's, I think, what it's called, hostra. It's one of those big leaf plants. I mean, I don't know. I haven't found any toenails when I was gardening.
Yeah, but
okay.
the card should still be there, and
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. But that was my wife's favorite part of the movie. I was like, oh, it's because it's like cooking, you know, puts all these
really?
ingredients into the ground. But
Oh, wow.
plus also, you know, at least there's 2 people. There's sort of like a guide and a sort of ritual of being able to grieve a loss in some kind of physical way. I mean, it's interesting how the physical and the spiritual, whatever that means, kind of like relates and needs each other. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the more meditating I'm doing, the less like I always think like, who are you? And then I realized, oh, this has got to be all I see. First I identified a stranger, and then I was like, it's not a stranger, it's an observer. And meditation was really sort of like got me to understand this. And I've always been fascinated with nothingness, but then terrified by it. But then within meditation, I can confront nothingness and the Kia and the void center of consciousness without fear. And then I feel that the only sort of real spiritual state is either fear or love. And it's all a matter of bringing the fear down. And you sort of have to surrender. But how do you surrender without becoming a doormat, or surrender? You know, who do you surrender to? I mean, I didn't want to have this film be like, oh, surrender to this, and like, it's like we don't know, and like we have to stay in contact with our own sense of like what we're ready for and what we're not ready for. And I think by nature, we are risk takers, or at least I think we have to be, because at a certain point when I felt that I wanted to end my life, I realized that I just wanted peace. And then I also realized maybe the fact that I can't end my life means it's not mine to end, that there's something um, uh, um, there's something moving within me, and it's very akin to nothingness, and that may be the starting point. I don't know, it's so subjective, and I wanted to not, like, I like the non-dogmatic quality of chaos magic, in that it's very like what is working for you at this moment. It's very much about the individual making their choices, and but then there's also a danger too. I mean, there's a danger to everything. That's almost why I didn't want to be nailed down with any of this stuff. I didn't want it to be dogmatic. I didn't want it to be an instruction manual of like what to believe. I wanted things to contradict itself. I wanted things, and at least be interesting. And even for me, it just needed to come out of my head and be put into a film, so I could sort of go, almost leave it behind in a certain way. And the fact that and I just appreciate the friends that were in the film and trusted me to be part of this, because no one really knew what was going on at the moment. And
well, it was funny. It's just like part of the reason I just mentioned it, because it was funny, obviously, just coming over to Pepper's house, not knowing exactly what we were going to film in like February or something, and the task was to dig a hole for the scene and to bury the memories of my dead mother. And I don't think the permafrost had quite gone away. So it was like, and I'm just thinking about, April Fool's Day being yesterday, and it just, so digging a hole was quite a fool's errand. And
Yeah.
I just think it was kind of funny if I mean, we made it look easy, Carrie made it look easy on film. But it was quite cold that evening.
it was.
I mind you. I think it was. I think,
Those are my hands, and then I did the hands. Remember?
Was your hand on my
Those
shoulder?
those are my hands digging and putting the.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay. Because my hands were too cold. I was like, no, I need my union rep.
did you get your meal voucher?
Did I get my meal voucher? I was like, where's Crafty?
I think Amazon. I think Amazon owes you some per diem or something. I don't know.
I know. I was like, where's Crafty?
Last I saw that 2 people on Amazon watched the film. I was like, that's amazing. Did they get through 5 minutes of it? I don't know. But I mean, I tried to read, Mexico City Blues, which Bob Dylan and Allen Ginsberg are saying how great it was. And I was like, I got to get it. And I couldn't make sense of it either. But I don't know. You keep at it. A lot of things need initiation. And this one, I don't know. So anybody else? What?
I'm told On the Road is a classic, but I couldn't get through it.
Yeah. But anybody else want to pipe in?
What was the editing process like? Because I see that you had a couple of stop motion things during the speaking parts. There was double, not mirror exposures.
Yeah.
What was that like, and what prompted you to do that?
Well, a lot of it, I like the dance sequences. Because I was gonna I first put in sort of this African dance and drumming in the beginning, and that was going to be related to the polyrhythm throughout. So it's going to have like this tribal celebration of people physicalizing their anxiety of like, taking this anxiety and these fears and passions and putting them into dance and having that be the ritual that exercises the tension and sort of physicalizes the spiritual unrest. And then I wanted to have, the rest of the film be these sort of nerds talking about their feelings and not dancing, and sort of like being just sort of all in their head, all thinking they can think their way out of sort of a spiritual prison. And I thought that was, and then have this polyrhythm beneath it as sort of like a pulse and a meditation. And so, but there were too many, it could have been misunderstood. And so I opted out of, I cut out I took out the tribal footage because I just didn't want to have any controversy. But I had all this footage of me dancing, and so I have that was the replacement for the dancing. The editing was just on the it was just as I was shooting, I was editing, as I was shooting, I was editing. And with digital editing, you can make a lot of changes without any physical damage. Like when you had film, and there'd be cuts in the film and so forth. I wasn't sure about the the doubling of the the mirroring of the image is easy to do within Final Cut, and a lot of it had to do with the idea of the right and left hemisphere, and the I just like that balance image anyway. I'm drawn to sort of the balance of these two sides, and I think it echoed the right and left hemisphere, even though, and also just putting the altar where we have the representation of nothingness within Ayin of the tree of life, and then we have the chaos star, and then we have sort of the symbol of unconditional love, and then on either side are Judases, which is sort of the betrayers. It's like the physicalization of this ideal, this pure space within the middle, and that on either side is sort of a betrayal of that. But it seems like anything sort of physicalized of an ideal is always sullied to some extent, and that was the idea of that. And a lot of it had to do with people trying to connect with one another. I mean, the mental illness that I suffer from and so forth. I mean, it's very isolating, and you can create a world in your head, but then sometimes that world can turn on you and become a prison within itself. And that was what was happening at the point of this film, and that there had to be a break from that. There had to be that isolation had to be cracked. So a lot of people talking to one another, are they talking to the figure of love, or are they talking to one another? That was left ambiguous. And the sort of like jump cuts, I just like that aesthetically, and I think it also reflects sort of the fragmented state of mind. And I liked, I kind of like it to be not slick a lot of times, or the editing to be jagged, because I just think that because a lot of this came out of sort of raw, it wasn't a refined concept. It came in these fragments, and I was sort of like trying to bring this chaos into a certain order, and I didn't want to leave the raggedness behind. I felt like I would have betrayed that. I almost feel like it should have a bit of a rawness, and that's just, I think, I don't know if it's just I don't know if it comes out of just laziness, or just that I feel closer to it when it shows the ragged edges. I just feel like I'm still connected to it, that it's not this pristine thing that is suddenly I want to know that it's come from sort of this raw place. I just think to have something to be so slick, it dehumanizes it. And I guess, and I'm just not that kind of artist, or it wasn't appropriate for this film. I think it needed a sense of uncertainty. It needed a sense of like, we don't know what's going to happen, and fragmentedness, or else if it was any more slick, I think it would have betrayed the sort of the nature of it. And the interesting thing is I'm so far from the state of mind I was in when I made it. And I do think that the film had a lot to do with me getting from that place to this other place, and it's all fear, it's all dealing with fear, which I think is the kind of the only like spiritual situation. But fear is here to protect us. We're ultimately, like they say in the beginning of the film, it's like predator or prey. Am I a predator or am I a prey? I'm like, when I'm in my left brain, I'm like focusing closely on an object to find food or something, but then the right brain is sort of looking out peripherally, because as I'm looking for food, I could be the prey of something, and maybe that's just a matter of living in New York City, and because you feel like that on the streets. And I think it's probably getting more dangerous too, but it'll be more like the 70s. Anybody else? I just want to thank everybody who's in the film: Joe, Dan, Rob, Maura. Thanks for coming, everybody. Anybody else want to say something? Joe, what did you think? I mean, we just became friends, and I was like, oh, he's an actor, I'm going to put him in my film. And I felt bad because I was like, this guy can really act, and I'm not really. I don't have something for him to really act. And I was like, I got to write something decent. I got to bring out my inner mammoth and like write like some Glenn Ross or something for you to do. But it was fun. There were moments where it was like, okay, like in the garden, I think there was a little bit of like, okay, let's see if I can do, because I'd felt like, I'm just making this homemade movie, and here I have someone who has actual gift. And what must he think of me with all this? When he finally saw it, because I put a fake name, I was like, oh, he can't, when he sees the film, he's not going to want to have his name on it. So any thoughts?
Yeah, hi, everyone.
Hi.
What did I think of it? I honestly need to go back and rewatch it. I remember my initial reaction was feeling proud that I was a part of it. For me, it was an opportunity. I was doing while I was doing, the shooting went on for a very extended period of time. But in the midst of shooting, sorry, there's this dog who will not shut up. While we were shooting this, I think we shot it over the course of like 5 months, 6 months.
Probably, yeah.
And so you can kind of see my body shape changing, according to how depressed and how much I was eating. But I was doing a play during that time by Mac Wellman, and I learned a lot from that play. And it actually, it's kind of not, Mac Wellman often writes very nonsensically. He basically is just giving a middle finger to, the institution of theater in the way he writes, and saying, oh, I can't do this. All right, I'll show you, And so it was really great doing that play in conjunction with this film, because stylistically, there was kind of something similar about it, in this movie, it felt almost like non-acting in a way. And that was how I felt doing the Mac Wellman play, Bad Penny, as what it was called. So, I was proud to be a part of the film. I think it is very complicated, and there are parts of it that I still, when I watch it, I have a lot of questions. But I think you're a great editor too. I always said if I was going to shoot something, because I actually produced a movie recently, but if I was ever, I would love to work with you as far as I think the editing is great, and I think you have a lot of great ideas. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm very happy to hear that you're proud to be a part of it, because I'm proud that you're in it. And a lot of the films that I make, I do with friends, and I'm like, if nothing else, here's a home movie that me and my friends made that will, when we're in we're in our old age, if we make it, we can look back and say, okay, we did this silly thing or whatever. So it's like, even, so what about Dan? You got anything to say?
Well, I like the whole thing artistically and the many concepts that you have floating through it. And I relate to it at any rate, even though there's so many concepts that you have in it. And I've watched it a few times, and I just tried to remember like the different parts, so I kind of skimmed through it a little bit before we did this. And I really I love what you did.
Thanks. Yeah, I think a lot of this was like throw all these ideas against the wall and see what sticks, meaning like, and I think that's, legitimate, as I think any artist who's has these ideas that are, or whatever, that are obsessing them, they usually have to sort of get it out there and and see what sticks. I guess that's self-indulgent, but that's what we artists do. We're self-centered, we're self-indulgent, but it's pretty much, it's like, I'd rather see a bad film that's an honest expression of some guy's or woman's or anyone's truth, or, even if it's a lie, than someone saying, oh, here, I'm trying to make, I'm going to do, an imitation of something. I'd rather see someone's failed attempt and go like, well, that came from a real place, and it took courage to either, even if it's a big lie, I mean, if it's that to me is interesting. I'd rather see, because I'm part of this group, and they're like, oh, we don't believe in the idea of genius. And I kind of do believe that sometimes the individual, when in a certain context, will be this crazy person, and then time will move forward, and you'll see that person was making a lot of sense. There was a certain, within that time, there was this madness, but then that it became ultimately something sane. I think a person like William Burroughs, who's just, a freak, it's just like, he just didn't belong on the planet, and like, for him to survive the ugly spirit that he'd had to battle his whole life and to overcome it, it's like something tremendous. I mean, he'll be the first to tell you that he's not, he shot his wife, for Christ's sake, and he loved his wife, and it's like, so it's not like, but it's like he overcame, and at the end of his life, that was so amazing that he did say that, and he found the redemptive quality of love through animals, through his cats. That's where he found that kernel of love, and that's where he found, which I think is the only kind of thing which can sort of fight the ugly spirit. And I'm like, I'm not, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but follow their truth, and of course you want to stay safe within yourself and others, but whatever. But thanks, Dan, for being in my movies. Love you. And Joe, Rob, anybody else? Did we lose Adam? Did my speech about love lose Adam? All right, whatever.
Technical problems. Who knows what happened?
Oh, he had technical problems? I'm glad he made it, though.
He was having it for a while, so he may have gotten kicked off, or I don't know.
But I mean, it's but yeah, I mean, it's yeah.
So what's on the plate next? What are some ideas you have working right now?
Well, like last year, I just made a lot of stuff. But I'm like, I can't really show them because the first thing I made was cosmetic consciousness, and I just was like, I always wanted to cut, painful childbirth with hardcore pornography. I was like, it's like, that has to be in a film, an underground film. And I asked my friend Mark, who's an underground filmmaker, he's worked with Gigi Allen and does like extreme shit. I was like, has anybody cut, painful childbirth with porn? And he's like, not that I know. I was like, this is kind of a Mark idea. Is it okay if I do it? And so, that has to be password protected on Vimeo. But that was it. But so there's that, and then I made Malevolent Intelligence, which is sort of I mean, cosmetic consciousness. I don't know. There's riots in it, and there's like kids, and there's like, music, and like dealing with my love relationships, and like me dressed in
it's
drag.
the first COVID, COVID. There's COVID in
Is
it.
that the COVID musical?
Yeah. The first
And I'm like,
COVID, X-rated COVID.
right, yeah.
What was the tagline?
The X-rated COVID musical. And so
Pornographic.
yeah.
Okay.
Some like, and then I cut in some.
I don't know. It might not catch on.
It's it's another feature pretentious art movie, but there's porn and painful pregnancy. It's got really, but at the end there's, it's star-studded. It's got Oprah in the end. It's got Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande, but they're all like, I got these pictures of wax celebrities that look awful. So it's at the end. So that's a trip. You can find it on my Facebook. And then after that, I made, Malevolent Intelligence. I was outraged to hear that Lolita was based on a real girl. And I was like, this is horrible. I've always been horrified by that book, and that his wife actually threw out the manuscript to Lolita twice. No, he threw it out and his wife retrieved it twice. And so I'm like, it's my disgust over that, and like and tribute to Florence Sally Horner. And then it's sort of speaking from my inner child. It sort of starts with a picture of me as a child, and then sort of goes through life going like, look at all this horrible stuff going on. It talks about Nexium, and then it has a bit about it has Andrea Dworkin in it. And it has Roman Polanski, where he drugged and raped a 13-year-old child, and like, she's grown and forgives him. I'm like, all right, well, what are you going to do? So it's like, I want to make these grand statements about the world, but everything's, it's all in the details. And then, I don't know, it's got my songs and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, I think that was the end of the features. Oh, I made the demonic option. It's really dark. And it has, if you liked it?
I liked it.
Yeah.
It was different. Yeah.
And that has like, right, yeah. So
I watched Lolita for the first time. I have this new Alexa that tells me, picks stuff out for me.
Which, did you watch the Kubrick one?
Maura, which one did I watch? The second one.
With yeah. With Jeremy Irons.
Maura told me it was based on the, yeah.
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 So, and then I made a short film about gaslighting that's kind of funny. That's on Vimeo. But I'm doing music now and, working for the man. I don't know if I got any more features in me, but I'm trying to work on a disco album.
A lot of music pretty easily.
What?
You seem to put out a lot of music pretty easily. You have quite a few CDs.
When I'm inspired by Jandek, I don't break a sweat, but I realize it's good. But
forever I did.
What?
They had this art opening last night in the East Village, and it took me forever to do music for it.
Wow.
But I produced a couple songs for this girl that's like an operatic singer.
An operatic scene?
Yeah, she's an operatic singer, and she wanted to do some music, so I did a few backup tracks for beats.
Cool.
But it takes me forever to do.
Yeah.
To figure out what I'm doing.
Yeah. Has anybody else got anything to say, or questions or anything? All right. I guess we'll wind it down, Robert.
Yeah, sure.
You got anything?
Looking forward to when you can actually work with people again, have actors and stuff. So
Well, I do have actors. It's just they're hostages. You know, I got to work within a non-hostage because a lot of my films
Well,
look
you know,
like
COVID
hostage
thing,
videos.
it's hard, you
It's
know.
like repeat these lines under, or I'll. But yeah, I would love to make like a real movie, but
We need
it's
to
a
come up with a topic again and then challenge each other to make a movie that's completely different from each other.
well, I feel like helping was my well, we're getting off track, but
Well, when we were
I would
talking
like to
about
make a real movie, but
tarot,
what?
when we were talking about the tarot, and this is what happened with your
Yeah,
film and my film, I think it's just interesting, you know, to compare.
yeah.
I
But
love the tarot card game.
yeah,
What?
this is
I
fun.
love the tarot card game that you went through.
Yeah,
How you related it to everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
I'm sort of winding down. I guess that's it. No?
I guess so.
Thanks everyone for watching the film, even if
Thank
you
you,
watched a bit
everyone.
of it. Thanks everybody for being in the film. Thanks everybody for being here and listening. And you know, there's, you know, as an artist, you know, you have to connect with an audience, even if it's through Zoom, and you have to, I have to show gratitude to the people who are in the film. And, you know, as I said, if nothing else, it's a home movie that we can all, that we're all participating in, and take from it what you will, and, you know, make your own if you want to. It's a pain in the butt, or it could be fun. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks again, Carrie.
Thanks,
Bye,
Carrie.
Gary.
Thanks, Pepper.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. It was good seeing all you guys.
You too.
All right. Since I'm the host,
Yeah.
I'm going to count down 5, 4,
Four,
3,
three,
2, 1.
All right.